Crossing over during meiosis. Okay, that's what this is a diagram of. And it's only looking at sex chromosomes. So we're talking about any mammal here, including humans. But we're not looking at every chromosome. We're just looking at the sex chromosomes. So meiosis is one of the processes that happens when you're making gametes. All right, so we're making sperm and egg. Now, I told you that XY males and XY females and XX males are fairly common in mammals. So we're going to look at the genetic mechanism where that happens. So not really focused on event in earlier classes. During meiosis, during prophase and metaphase of meiosis, which we'll go over again this week, this event called crossing over happens. And we defined it at the bottom of the page. We said crossing over is switching entire sections of chromosomes with adjacent homologous chromosomes that occurs during meiosis. This only happens in one region of the XY chromosomes called the pars. So make sure that you have that piece of information. It's essential to understanding the questions I'm going to be asking. Crossing over is switching over entire sections of chromosomes with adjacent homologous chromosomes that occurs during meiosis. But for the sex chromosomes, the XY chromosomes, crossing over only happens in one region called the pars. Everyone say pars. Pars, okay? It is the pseudo-autosomal region. We should go ahead and define it. Pseudo or pseudo, I've never known how to say this word. Pseudo-autosomal region. In other words, it's the part of the X and Y that's sort of like a regular chromosome, not like a sex chromosome. Remember, we basically define two kinds of chromosomes. Autosomes are all the chromosomes in a eukaryote, and then the sex chromosomes are the ones with the genes that determine sex on them. Sort of very arbitrary seeming naming there, but helpful. Okay, so there is only one gene necessary to make a mammal male. Does anyone want to tell me it? Do you know? Yeah, can you say it louder? The SRY gene? Yeah, so Ash is telling us the SRY gene is the gene that makes a mammal male, and that is true. So everyone say SRY. All right, the SRY gene. Okay, so looking at this diagram here, boop. All right, this is crossing over. Each chromosome is copied.
Sorry, do you mind zooming in a little? It's like super low res on my end.
Yeah,
so it helps if the closer up.
All right, so this is crossing over for any chromosome. You're welcome. This is crossing over for any chromosome right here. All right, so we've got a chromosome has been copied, and next to it, the maybe paternal chromosome has been copied. They're colored based on paternal and maternal. So let's say P is paternal. So it was inherited from a father's genes in the gamete is paternal, and M is maternal, meaning it came from mother's gamete is a chromosome, the version of the chromosome from mother. And again, we'll go over the specifics of meiosis here soon. But what we need to know is, right in this box here, it's showing us genes literally from this chromosome get moved over onto that chromosome and vice versa. And in fact, it's not just genes, it's whole stretches of the chromosomes, whole chunks. On an autosome, you're looking at 3 to 5 crossing over events, potentially as many as 7 crossing over events during meiosis, which means jumbling of genetic material. Okay? It's generally done correctly. And so what you get is potentially novel genes, but functional genes. Right? It can clip in the middle of a gene, but if it clips in the middle of the gene on one chromosome, it's going to clip in the middle of the gene in exactly the same spot on the other chromosome, and all you've done is change what the resultant gene expression product looks like, but generally still functional. I like to tell students at this point that you actually are a unique snowflake because of crossing over during meiosis, which previously you've not been told. All right. So now let's look at just the XY chromosome. So if this is an XY, an X chromosome and a Y chromosome in a cell that's going to make a gamete, we can say that this cell comes from who, Grace? Mom or dad?
The X comes from mom.
No, this is a cell that's going to go through meiosis.
It's both of them.
So whose cell is it?
The offspring cell?
No, this is parent. Which parent?
I mean, it could be either of them. Theoretically, it's usually dad.
It cannot. This is the cell. These are the sex chromosomes in the cell that are going to make gametes.
So it has to be dad?
Yes, awesome. Okay, so dad's gonad cell makes 2 different sperms, okay? And during the process of making sperms right here, during meiosis, on this side, crossing over happens, and the SRY gene stays on what chromosome? Azure.
The Y gene?
Y chromosome, yes. The SRY
Or
gene.
Y chromosome?
Yes, it stays on the Y chromosome. Okay, so that's normal. The SRY gene is not supposed to move to the X chromosome during meiosis. Okay? And this region here is called the pars. Everybody label that pars region. Okay, and over here we're looking at the pars region too. That's that little, you might even want to color that thing in or something like that with a pencil. That's what I'm going to do real quick. All right, okay. That's the pars region right there. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, during meiosis, crossing over occurs, and this was normal. Nothing happened to the SRY gene. Now, okay, now this X chromosome, okay, meiosis, right? The result of meiosis is this X chromosome and this Y chromosome, okay? And this, only one chromosome of each set gets put in a sperm. So that is put in a sperm, okay? Regular X chromosome put in a sperm. This is fertilization, so this comes from mom's egg. Comes from mom's egg. Okay? And so after fertilization, the resultant baby has 2 what, Miriam? Two what for the sex chromosomes?
Wait, I'm sorry, I tuned out for a second.
Nina, the female offspring has, or sorry, shoot, the offspring has what?
2 X chromosomes.
Yes, and is the SRY gene present or absent?
It's absent.
So the resultant child is what?
Female.
Excellent. Okay. Miriam, did you catch all that?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you help me with the next one?
Sure.
Okay. So now we're looking at this other side, okay? During meiosis, during the phase called crossing over, meiosis, wow, really hard word to spell. Okay? Look at what happens here. What happens to the SRY gene? Where did it get moved to in this situation?
Onto the. Oh, sorry, I didn't know I was still muted. Onto the chromosome.
Yeah, onto which chromosome?
One of the X chromosomes.
Exactly. So during crossing over, when sperm is being made, dad's SRY gene gets put on an X chromosome. Okay.
Mhm.
Then
Yeah.
this X chromosome gets put in a sperm. Okay. And then
Yes.
another X chromosome comes from mom's egg during fertilization.
Mhm.
And what do we get?
It's a boy.
The boy, it is an XX male.
Mhm.
Okay, groovy. All right. So looking at this figure, given what we know about sex determination, what sex will the child be? So the question now is, what sex is the child going to be that receives this chromosome, Ari? And this means a Y chromosome without. This is a Y without. So this is going to go in a sperm too. It is a Y without the SRY gene.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of the question?
Well, the question is question 1. So everyone should probably look at that. And it's looking at the Wilhelm figure. Given what you know about sex determination, what sex is the child going to be that receives this Y chromosome without the SRY gene? What do you think, Ari?
I think male.
There's no SRY gene.
Oh, well then I'm assuming female, but it
Right.
would be slightly like I don't remember. It was something from the last unit. It was weird, but
Okay, but
yeah.
wait, what's the chromosomes of this female?
XY.
Yeah, that's why you said that. That's why you wanted to say male there. It is an XY female. Okay? Because the SRY gene is missing. Okay. And so actually, I'm going to kind of answer these other questions for you. Is the SRY gene sufficient to cause male development? Yes, actually, it is. That's all you need. Is the SRY gene necessary to form male genitalia? Well, if an XY female is only missing the SRY gene, then yes, it is necessary and sufficient. If the gene is expressed, I have to say if expressed, right? Because could you imagine potentially that an SRY gene being turned off and then that inherited? Sure, we can imagine that. If expressed, yes. So you can actually inject the SRY gene product into a developing mouse's gonad and make it male. despite the absence of the gene on the chromosome, which is kind of neat. So question, and this is one I want everyone to think about. I don't want you to answer. So first of all, you should now be able to explain the answer to question 1, why an XY female happens when the SRY gene is missing. So that's kind of like something you can explain. But do you think it's likely an XY female would survive? And here's what I want you to consider. I want you to consider X inactivation that we've been talking about. So the thing that I want you to think about is, do you think it is likely an XY female would survive? And I want you to consider X inactivation.
It's like it's on the bottom of the Y chromosome, like not on the side with the pars, but wait, is the pars like the top of the X chromosome?
This part here on the X and Y is the pars. Where is the SRY gene in relationship to the pars region? Is it adjacent?
The
Close?
top part. Right.
Is it close to the pars? Is SRY gene next to the pars?
No, it's like on the opposite side, on the bottom of the Y chromosome.
No, the pars is what I colored in right here.
Oh,
Is it next to,
okay.
are the SRY
So it's
genes?
right below it?
Yeah, it's right below it. So the SRY gene, would you say it's close to the pars or far away?
It's close.
It's close. It's adjacent even, right? Adjacent is the word when two things are next to each other. Which I cannot spell because it's a big word. No, that's not right. I don't think there's an S in there. Okay, adjacent. The SRY gene is adjacent to the pars region. Yes? Where does crossing over normally take place? We wrote the definition on the bottom. Yeah, it only happens in the pars. So crossing over happens in the pars.
So does that enough to, like, weird happen with crossing over when the SRY gene is affected, or is it like close enough that it can just accidentally attract them?
So the question asked in the classroom was, is the SRY gene close enough to the pars region that it can get dragged over without an error? The answer is no, an error has to happen. However, why are XY females common, Ari? Why would you say XY females and XX males are common?
I have no idea.
Okay, crossing over happens where? On the sex chromosomes. Starts with a P, ends with an R?
The pars region.
Yes. Crossing over happens in the pars region. Okay. If there is a mistake, that's likely going to move genes near the pars or genes really far away from the pars. Which one? Ari?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Okay. Let's see. So crossing over is supposed to happen where again?
pars region.
Yeah, and if a mistake happens where those proteins grab too much chromosome, what's going to get moved more frequently? Genes close to the correct location or genes on the other side of things?
Genes close to the correct location.
Yeah, these proteins are physical things grabbing actual stuff, right? So if they make a mistake and grab a little too much, what gene can they grab?
They can grab the SRY gene.
And what is the only gene responsible for determining what sex an individual is?
The SRY gene.
Oh, boom. So tell me, why is crossing over so common in mammals, Ari?
Because if a mistake is made, or if a mistake is made, then there can be, or there's a high probability that crossing over will occur.
Because the SRY gene is where?
Right below the pars region, right below the pars region, which is close to the SRY gene, or adjacent to it.
Yeah. Yes. I love that you said a high probability. That's the truth. If a mistake is made in crossing over, since the SRY gene is right next to the pars, there is a high probability that sex reversal will happen. So yeah, you just answered you did some more, we had some more higher order thinking. We answered another question about crossing over. So to sum up, problems with sexual reproduction, not 100% effective. It takes a long time span for development. You have to find a partner, which can take forever. It takes two to make a thing go right. There are less offspring. It's risky. It's costly because of all the time put into offspring, and it exposes organisms to disease during the process. The only benefit is there's more genetic diversity in offspring. The benefits of asexual reproduction are it almost always works. Development's basically immediate. Adults form as soon as it's over. It's do it yourself. You get tons of offspring in small amounts of time. Asexual reproduction is low risk, low cost, low exposure to predation. The problem? There's less genetic diversity. The offspring are clones. All right. So the article that you read, so now let's look at page 83, had some seriously problematic phrasing in it. And I want to point some of these out. So go to page 83. This was the homework. Let me take a gander at it. Didn't do it? Oh. Send a photo of the homework if you did do it. A biologist actually said these things. One of the quotes was, most creatures reproduce through sex rather than by cloning in order to keep a step ahead of threatening parasites. This implies individuals evolve. It implies individuals are choosing to evolve. And it implies that evolution is goal-directed. All madness. What they meant to say was, disease was an evolutionary force that probably caused the evolution of sexual reproduction. Because offspring from sexual reproduction have more variety, and if diseases are common, there's a high selection for variation in the offspring, because if a disease kills one individual in a clonal population, it probably wipes out the entire population. But if there's mixing of genes, like in meiosis, there is a higher chance an individual would be resistant to the disease, survive, and reproduce. Here's another crazy thing the author said. Parasites hone their genes to evade the immune system of the host. They're talking about the immune system of the host is a selective force that over time selects for the survival of parasites whose genes can invade the host. Okay, so unfortunately, the author was very cavalier about the way they said things, but it wasn't the end of the world. So I still think people should try to do these if they have not done them, but we are going to write down reality here. We're gonna write some notes here, and then I'm going to ask you to use a video. This used to be a midterm question pre-COVID. When we went over the entire history of all living things on planet Earth, because back when we had more time in the good old days. All right, and we're going to look at the direct evidence from the article of which might have been hard to pick out. Okay, so number one, I'm going to number them. The numbers don't mean anything. Direct evidence that sexual reproduction responds directly to selective pressure in some animals, to selective pressure of disease. Okay? The selective pressure of disease. Okay? 1. In some animals and plants. Geez, Jarrett. It's almost like you didn't edit this. The author says that in high disease environments, this is what the author should have said in correct English. In high disease environments, individuals have evolved strategies to mate with unrelated partners. So this idea that disease selects for diversity. And he's talking about trees in the rainforest. In the article, that's what he's referencing. But the truth is, this even happens in human populations that live in those regions. Though they have societies around these complicated behaviors, humans are a bit more complicated than trees as far as the way that they think about what they're doing. But even like human civil societies have evolved complicated strategies to mate with unrelated partners in places where unrelated partners are really far away if you're a plant or a human.
Jarrett, what does it say in the parentheses? It's so grainy, like I can't see letters.
What now?
What does it say in the parentheses? It's so grainy that I can't see letters.
Greater diversity of offspring. I wonder if I can do better. Maybe I can do better.
Jarrett, for the article, one of the other things that I thought that the author said that seemed a little sort of problematic in their phrasing was that sort of the implication that viruses and parasites have like brains that are actively like thinking about how to overpower immune systems instead of like doing the survive to reproduce more often, like viruses that are more or parasites that are more successful will be able to survive to reproduce more often. Is that correct? Accurate?
Yeah, that's why I said this parasites hone their genes to evade the immune system of the host, that was problematic. Right? It's that the immune system of the host acts as a selective force where only the parasites that have genes that can defeat the immune system survive to reproduce offspring, right? And then the population evolves over time or changes over time into a population of parasites or bacteria that have the genes that can defeat the immune system of the host. Yes, that was very problematic. I agree. All right, so here's one piece of evidence that might have been hard to find in that article or understand because of the loose language of the author. A second thing that the author said is that vertebrates often select disease-free mates. Disease-free mates. Okay, and these are stories that we used to think we thought we were observing sexual selection, right? But it turns out if you're selecting for a more fit mate, that's actually more like natural selection, right? These sexual selection, once investigated more as an evolutionary force, more and more examples of it turn out to be the organisms are actually choosing a disease-free mate. And one of a piece of evidence of a disease-free mate for a cardinal, a male cardinal, is his bright, bright red feathers. And the reason why the male cardinals that are brightest red are most healthy is because they're getting access to the best food. And in order to get access to the best food, they have to be the most healthy. So weirdly, females are actually just choosing the healthiest males. That's not really sexual selection. And then the two pieces in the article. So snails in the disease in snails that can sex or asex, sex or asex, choose sex in disease-ridden environments. So this was the experiment the article is describing. And finally, snails that asex in disease-ridden environments tend to die in the experiment. They become parasite overloaded and die in the experiment that was run. So I'm gonna end this with a video that sets up how you should think about writing an answer to the question, explaining how disease causes the evolution of sex in a population of organisms that can sex or asex. So start your answer, and this will be a place to put it. Start with a population of individuals. I don't want you to try to describe the evolution of a genetic mechanism. We haven't even done meiosis yet. Start with a population of individuals that can sex or asex in your attempt at this question, okay? And use disease as a selective force. And we are gonna watch a 2-minute video that I made to help do this. Start with a population that can sex or asex, and then use disease as a selective force.